Hello everyone and welcome to the shop. Glad you could join me again. Today we're going to be working on this bad boy right here. This is a monster. This is the biggest, baddest saw humankind has ever made. Well, okay, maybe not. I'm exaggerating. But it is a pretty big saw and it is pretty scary. A lot of people are afraid of these radial arm saws because they are really powerful, and the slightest little carelessness on your part and you will lose a finger, a hand, an arm, anything. It goes through lumber like it's butter. So they can be very, very dangerous and very scary. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about this saw today, but before we get into it, if you like dealing with old tools, fixing them up, cleaning them up, or DIY projects, automotive projects, working around the house, whatever it may be, if you enjoy that kind of stuff, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. That way you get notified of all future videos I put out. They're all going to be home related, DIY related, and tool related. So if you enjoy that, be sure to click that subscribe button. Anyway, so today's project is this big bad boy right here, like I said. It is a Sears Craftsman Radial Saw. And I didn't even know that Craftsman made radial saws, and I have a lot of Craftsman tools. I used to buy Craftsman all the time back in the 70s and 80s when, they were the best at, their products at that time. Later on, you had other, companies and so forth come into the game, but for the consumer, Craftsman was about the best back in the 70s and 80s because all the other names that are DIY related today used to be exclusively for the pros back in the day. So they were way too expensive and way too hard to get. That goes to show you right there, for you guys today that are not old timers like I am, Sears was pretty much the Amazon of their time. They were into everything. They used to do everything. They used to put out everything. They were like Amazon is today. They did it the harder way because they did it with brick and mortar stores and the catalog too. But there was no interweb back then. Anyway, so looking at this saw today, I came across this a couple of weeks ago. Haven't had time to really get into it up until now. I've been wanting to, but busy with many other things that I'm doing. Anyway, so this saw is a monster. It is heavy as heck. I mean, you can't tell by looking at it, but it is really a monster. You don't lift this up with one hand. You don't lift it up with two hands. You have to manhandle this. It is like dead weight. You really have to use your whole body to lift this baby up. And it was hard getting it into my truck. And then when I got home and I had to put it on this cart here, man, that was an effort, but I did it. And that cart is another story unto itself. The saw did not come with the cart. The saw came by itself. And then a couple of weeks later, I found this cart. And it was like a marriage made in heaven. It was perfect. The cart is almost the exact size of the saw. And, look at that. I mean, it's almost a perfect fit. Front to back, side to side, it is almost perfect. So I was astounded when I came across it, and I said, this is perfect. Because when I got the saw, I knew I have no place to put it in here permanently as a permanent fixture. I mean, there's just no room. I mean, even my miter saw, I have to tuck it under there and pull it out whenever I need it. So where am I going to put this monster? Well, I knew I had to have it be mobile, that I could move it around and pull it out when I need it and then put it away when I didn't. So this is perfect. I was planning initially to make some kind of a tabletop or a bench or something and put wheels on it. But this saved me the time and trouble and effort. This is perfect. Those wheels are really big and beefy, and those are some strong casters right there. And they lock, so they don't move around. So that is perfect. And this cart is a combination of plastic and metal, so it's very durable. I mean, this part here and these parts are plastic, but the body is metal. And it has a door here that I can store whatever I need in there, so I can have accessories and what have you inside there. So that's perfect. Now somebody cut a hole up here. Somebody cut that hole. That's not original for whatever reason. I don't know if they were using it as a trash container. I don't know. But I can take a piece of plywood, put it up here, screw it in place, and that'll get rid of that problem right there. No trouble at all. Anyway, back to the saw. The saw is a pretty decent saw. Here you have all the writing and stuff on it right there. You have the settings for the blade and everything, and the fences, all that stuff up there. The motor right here Let me see if I can light this up a little bit for you. See if you can see in here. Yeah. Too bright. Yeah, it lights it up a little too much. Anyway, maybe that's better. You can see right there all the specs of the motor. It is a pretty good motor. It will run on 120 or 240, 3,400 RPMs, etc. It's not bad at all. So it's a very good saw. And then over here, it has this accessory power shaft. So you can use it for attaching a router, carving, sanding, drilling, whatever you need. You can see it attaches right onto there. And you just attach whatever unit you have over here on this side, and you could have it standing up right here, and it'll power it for you. So that's very convenient right there. And the saw still works. Like I said, it goes back and forth. It's not jammed up or anything. You have all your miter adjustments right there. And you have all your setting adjustments up here. There's the on-off button right there. All the settings over here on this side. These little winglets down here are adjustable. They go up and down, side to side, whatever you need. And I believe that these winglets are for in case you have like a big bench or something and you're going to make this a permanent mount, you can cut a hole for the saw, drop it in there, and then these winglets will attach to the side of the bench. So that's what I believe those are for. And then it must have had a kind of a wood section up here for working, because you can't work like that. So it probably had a wood section, but that probably got messed up and taken off. I mean, sacrificial, obviously. So I'm going to have to put something there. This is for adjusting the saw to go up and down. It turns, and you can make the saw go higher or lower. You have your pivot controls here, your miter adjustments up here as well. So you got two on the side there and up here. And it's pretty dirty and rusty and, you know, a little bit messed up, but it still works. I already tested it, and we can make it even better. I'm not going to make this a full-blown restoration. More like a restoration is what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to make it nice, make sure it's safe, make it usable, because I intend to use it. And some things that need to be done, like back here, you can see there's a bit of a problem with the electrical cord. So I'm going to need to open this up and fix that up a little bit. You can see there's a lot of rust going on back here, so that needs to be cleaned up. The previous owner, I mean, this is the stenciling that tells you right there a lot of the how things work. But the previous owner did a lot of doodling and writing and stuff up here for whatever specs they used to use. So that needs to be removed. Got to clean that up. Doesn't do me any good. This right here, this cover, the saw probably came with a plastic cover right here, and they broke it off or something. I don't know what happened. But they built this cover, and I mean, it's okay. If I have to, I'll use it for now and maybe make a better one later. But look, you know, it's kind of floppy, so I don't like that. And the way they attached it is using like a spring. So I really don't like this right here very much at all. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to see what's going on here. There has to be a way to attach it to the housing. So I don't know why it's not attached there properly, but we'll figure that out. As you see, it has some screws on there. We can open that up and see what needs to be done to fix that. And, you know, we'll go from there. We'll figure out all the different things that are wrong with it to make it work properly. So let's get into this puppy and see what we can do with it and clean it up and make it better. Alright guys, let me bring you up to date on everything that's been happening with this Craftsman Radial Saw. I cleaned it up, have done a lot of things to it, didn't shoot every last little thing because it's tedious and monotonous and it'll make the video way too long. So let me explain everything I've done and bring you up to date on everything that's taken place step by step so we don't hopefully miss anything. So starting at the bottom, remember the cabinet used to have a big gigantic hole in the bottom there. Well, I took a couple of planks that I had that I was going to toss out, and I cut them to size, and I attached them to the cabinet from the bottom up, so that way you don't see any screws. So it is attached onto there, will not come off, and that way there's no more hole. It can be used for putting things on there, tools, attachments, blades, whatever needs to be done. And there was a hole back here as well, close that up from the inside, so that way it's nice and secure. So the cabinet will function properly as a storage cabinet. On this side, as you already saw before, it has a door, and that'll work just fine. So as far as the saw goes, I've done a lot of things to it, and I did a little research on the internet, searching with the serial number and model number that I have right here. So that was quite helpful. I was able to look it up on the internet and find out a lot of good information about this saw. So basically there was a few assumptions that I made previously in the saw that I was incorrect about, and I'll explain as I go through it and update you as to what I have learned. So I found some shots, pictures of this radial saw on the internet, and basically I'll put them up so that way you can see what it actually is supposed to look like without this crazy box that it has on the front here. It has a normal cover that should be on the front here that is not attached with a spring from behind or with the attachments that I've made right here. I made these, you saw them previously. So this way it is much firmer, it will not go anywhere, doesn't rattle, doesn't move. The only drawback is that it's only good if you want to use the saw in this position. In other words, cutting back and forth. If you want to cut back and forth, perfectly fine, no problem at all. But this saw has a lot more functions than just cutting back and forth. It can do a lot of miters in a lot of different directions. And basically, before I explain them all, let me just say this saw will do the function of 3 different power tools. It will do all the work of a miter saw, it will do all the work of a table saw, and it will do all the work of a router. So 3 tools in one. So if we had the proper cover for right here instead of this thing, and I'm going to see if I can find one. Right now, all I did was I painted it to make it look decent because it looked like garbage before. And I made a little sticker for the front of it there to make it a little more attractive. So for the time being, it'll be a decent looking tool. But as soon as I can find a cover for that, I will replace it. And I'll update you down the road. And these markers up here, the scale that it has up here on both sides, this side and the other side, they're not just for looks. They're actual measurements for when you're cutting. And one thing I found is that there is supposed to be an indicator right here, which was missing on this saw. So I had to fabricate my own. And it's not perfect. When I find a better piece of metal that I can bend properly, I will do so. But for now, it does the job. As you can see, it indicates roughly where I'm supposed to be at. And, take it all the way out to the end, take it all the way back. It slides with the saw, so it works perfectly fine. So that's good there. And there's another one on the other side as well, which I made for here. And you can see that slides back and forth. But every time I took the metal and twisted it, it wanted to break on me. So I was limited as to how far I could really push it. So when I find a piece of rod or something that's L-shaped going that way, this way and that way, then I can bend it up and make it work better. So again, this is a temporary fix, but it does the job for the time being. So those were missing, I had to create those. So what I did was I cleaned up the top here. I cleaned up everything. You saw me do that before. I cleaned it all up, but believe it or not, the saw was gray before. That's not the believe it or not part. The saw was a dark, dreary gray before, which I don't know why they picked such an ugly color. All the Craftsman tools that I have are silver and black. Why this one was gray, I really don't know. But believe it or not, I cannot find any gray spray paint in my area. Every store I went to, it's either silver or gray primer. So I just gave up. I said, you know, the heck with it. I can't find it. I'm done. So I painted it black. And, you know, it looks a heck of a lot better. It looks really practically new because the paint was really messed up. You saw me. I had to sand it, you know, grind it down, you wire brush it, and mineral, try to remove the minerals. There was paint all over it. It was really crappy. So I cleaned it up as best I could, painted it black, and now it looks really, really good. So it's more in keeping with the Craftsman tools that I have, which are black and silver. The top here, to preserve it and not lose, because this is paint, you don't want this to keep fading away or getting messed up. So I covered it with a clear coat. Covered it with clear coat. That way, it will stay just the way it is now. Cleaned up the front face there, cleaned up the button. Now it looks decent. You can actually see it, where before it was so faded away, you couldn't even see the red power button. And I cleaned up that indicator there. That one was there. That one's original. The handle was so beat up, I really had to strip it down, and I painted that part silver. No problem there. So now it looks much better compared to, you know, other Craftsman tools that I have. It looks decent. Black, silver, more in keeping with the way it's supposed to be. But like I said, I did some research, and one of the things I found out is that Craftsman basically sold radial saws from the 1950s up to the 1990s, early 90s. And this saw, based on the serial and model number, it is from the 1980s, early 1980s. So that tells you how old this saw is, early 1980s, 82 to 85, somewhere in there. Very hard to be specific. So this saw is really quite old, and it still works, and it's a good saw. And like I said, it does a lot of different functions. And like we saw before, it has a miter indicator up there. You can go 60 degrees in either direction. So this arm up here will go that way 60 degrees and that way 60 degrees. So it'll go in both directions, so you can do really good miter cuts. So you can cut this way and that way and straight ahead. So that's really good right there. The saw body right here, it can do many different cuts. Like you see the miter gauge right there, meaning when you release this right here, this knob, when you release that knob, the saw body will tilt this way. It will tilt all the way to 90 degrees. So if I take off the brackets that I have there, I can turn this all the way down so the blade is flat along the bottom and at any angle in between. So angled or flat across. So it'll give you a number of different types of cuts. Also, this power port right here, where you can set up for a router or something like that, by reading the owner's manual and the instructions, I believe I was wrong in the assumption I made previously. The way I think that works is you don't have a separate attachment over here that it powers. No. What it does is you attach a head to that, kind of like you do on a drill press. So you put a chuck on it like you do a drill press. You put a router type chuck so it'll accept the router bits. And then what you do is you take the blade off of that side, and this motor will pivot 90 degrees, so that port is facing down. That way, you put the table underneath it and you use it as a router. The router will be facing downward. That part goes down and you have a router. So that is pretty cool right there. But you do have to remove the blade from that side so the motor can tilt up. If you release this, the yoke here and one on the other side, the motor will pivot. You see the blade, you have it like this right now. The motor will pivot this way. So you can have the blade either on this side here, rotate it this way, the blade will be on this side, or rotate it the other way and the blade will be on that side. So it'll rotate 180 degrees that way. Blade this way, or this way. So you can cut a whole lot of different angles on the table right there. So you can have cuts going this way, or from that side, or this way. you can have a lot of different types of cuts, plus the miter as well. So it does a heck of a lot of different types of cuts. It is a very good specialized saw. And for the money, I mean, if you have to pick one tool to do multiple jobs, that's a heck of a saw right there. And obviously we saw with the crank there, it goes up and down for the thickness or whatever you need to cut. The reason people are afraid of this saw is because the blade is on top, it's exposed, it's very easy to hurt yourself if you're not careful. So I can understand why people would be kind of afraid of that. But anyway, as far as this saw goes also, you had two choices when you bought this particular model. It either came with a table or without a table. And this one, I believe, probably came without the table. But the table just had metal legs that went straight down. Kind of like a table, the circular saw table, not circular saw, the table saw table that you can get at Harbor Freight. Something like that. That's what it looked like. I'll put up a picture of it. And that's what that one came with. And it did come with a tabletop, but like everything, it was sacrificial. So that probably has gone away a long time ago. And these guys back here, I don't know if you can see very clearly, these guys are adjustments, fence adjustments. They're on both sides. So you can adjust basically where you want to even out the tabletop that you put on here. And the tabletop is sacrificial. And you just replace it as often as you need to. So basically I created a sacrificial tabletop that I can just put on there and use as needed, and I'll create a better one when I have time. I'll show you that right now. So there you go. That's a quick and dirty tabletop that I created for it, and I haven't actually started cutting anything yet, but we will in a little bit. And this way I just created a real quick and dirty fence right here, just to, you know, be able to put things up against it, because you need to be able to stop things when you're sliding it back and forth, and something to hold it firm. You don't want things rattling around here because you can get some kickback. And that's one of the things that the cover that came with it originally had a kickback preventer built into it. So it was really quite useful. I need to find that thing. I really do. So that's what these guys are for back here. They're stops so you can even this out so you can get an even cut all the way across. And this will go back. And like I said, I need to basically cut into that. I'll probably need to pull this a little bit further forward. So that way the wood is out here and the saw will start cutting back here. You need to turn it on and then move it forward to do your cutting. So I'll need to adjust that in a little bit, but we'll do some cutting outside in just a few moments. And like I said, this is just some scrap wood, which is just to be used for some cutting here and there when it gets messed up. And when I get more practice with it and figure out exactly what my needs are, I can make a better top. That is not really a problem. So there you see how that looks and the functions that that has. So let's go take care of doing some cutting and see how this baby works.